continue with our big story this Thursday morning. The Eastern Cape is marking a day of mourning for the victims of the devastating floods that left a trail of destruction in parts of the province. So far, 92 people at least have died. Over 4,000 have been displaced and scores others are still missing in the wake of last week's heavy rains. A memorial service for the flood victims will be held at the King Sabatha Dalindyebo TVET College in Mthatha. That's where we find once again our senior reporter Chriselda Lewis, who joins us now live ahead of a memorial service scheduled to begin in the next hour. And Chriselda, the kind of tragedy to befall that community needs a multi-sectoral approach from government, religious organizations, and in fact, traditional leaders.
Oh, absolutely, Ayanda. It's going to need a multi-pronged approach to deal with the crisis that has befallen this community. The families of some of the victims, Ayanda, have already arrived here at the TVET College for the start of this day of mourning, for the start of this day of remembrance. And indeed, while government, both provincial and national, and a number of sectors, including aid organizations, traditional leadership is also quite critical in trying to, look at the needs of what these communities will be. The basic needs, of course, is what we have spoken about, but in terms of traditional leadership, if we're talking about the relocation of some of these families that have been affected, that's one of the aspects, that needs to be looked at, because what we've heard is that some of the families do not want to be relocated from the areas where their houses had been damaged or completely razed to the ground. But let me bring in now Nkosi Kwatiso, who is the chair of the Eastern Cape Traditional House and Khoisan leaders. Nkosi, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. I mean, the role of traditional leadership in this particular aspect, we're talking about, people who have been housed in areas where some of them don't want to move from. But where do you come in to try and assist in this tragedy, in ensuring that permanent solutions are found to what has taken place?
Greetings to you, Chriselda, and greetings to the whole of South Africa. The role of traditional leadership in this situation it's an important one, it's a vital one, because you'll remember that these communities, these people that are affected, they are the people that are coming, some of them, they are residing, they have homes in the areas where traditional leadership is leading. So therefore, traditional leadership is affected itself with all this. And therefore, with the involvement of cooperative governance and traditional leadership in the whole situation, so traditional leadership has been involved in all this and also gotten involved as individuals in terms of assisting here and there.
And I mean, this is quite important because, this particular area is, of course, rural, and communities themselves would obviously, when we talk about relocation, some of the areas where they reside, you might even find that you have, ancestral land. You might find that some have buried in the past their loved ones in those areas. So it's very, very difficult for them to move from there.
Indeed. To an extent, one of the traditional leaders I saw, she was commenting to say, those who have their homes still intact in their rural areas, they must go home so that they give they relieve the government from the pressure in terms of having people congested in the halls and all that. So indeed, you are quite right. Those homes are still there, and therefore, in reality, those people might not want to be moving anywhere. And traditional leadership is always willing to accept those people in their homes, in their respective areas.
Nkosi Kwatiso, thank you very much indeed for your time. The role of traditional leadership quite important there, Ayanda, in that with the traditional leadership, most of this are predominantly rural, of course, and some people not wanting to move for sentimental reasons from these particular areas. And of course, the last time that we spoke to the Department of Human Settlements, in fact, the ministry, Minister Thembi Simelane had mentioned that over 2,000 houses had been affected. In fact, she joins me here this morning. Minister, very good morning to you. Thanks indeed for your time. Not a very good morning, but a very sad day indeed today for the people of the Eastern Cape, and I think the country at large. Minister, the last time I heard you speak about more than 2,000 houses that had been affected. The days have gone by. Do we have any update pertaining to that in terms of the scope of work that you're now going to have to do?
Well, our scope of work, as I said, is increasing. We are almost at 3,000 types of destruction of homes, but mostly partially and mostly just needing assistance of repair. Our NHBRC team is on the ground, is assisting us to assess and evaluate if those houses are still strong enough to be repaired and they don't pose any form of danger. We are hoping that we will be concluding that work by this Sunday or so that we could be able to separate a partially and a fully destroyed house. We have received a positive response from the Department of Public Works here at KSD. I was in Butterworth yesterday. The municipality is also having municipal land ready to move those who were in the river bend into an area. We are forcing with all we can to jump the step of TRUs, which are temporary residential units, that let's rather allocate land where our people will be given title deeds with the assistance of Minister Nyocho, so that where we place them, it's in permanent land. We believe that government will save and people can then be able to rebuild for themselves. But the damage is too much.
Yeah. Minister, how far is that process? Because, of course, you would be in consultation with the provincial government as well as municipalities. So how far is that process? If I'm not mistaken, I think the housing policy speaks about 30 days that communities can be housed in these emergency temporary establishments that have been set up in.
Yes, you are very correct. That's what we're chasing the clock. Our policy says 30 days. And then it says that's a TEA, that's emergency accommodation. It could be a lodge, it could be a guest, it could be a school, it could be any other, but you must try by all means in 30 days to move them. We are preferring not to build TRUs because we want to move step closer because the land has been made available and it is government-held land. So we are not having a cost or avoiding a cost of purchase of land. We are still assessing the 3 that have been made available by the Department of Public Works. Obviously, after this major step tomorrow and after the burials, we can then be able to engage fully. There's a lot of psychological trauma our families are going through. You know very well, moving and relocating under normal circumstances is very strenuous. But here it is, your house it has been damaged, fully flattened, you lost a loved one. Some families lost 4 family members at a go, and you need to bury, and then you need to relocate. So we are trying as well to move in swiftly and steadily. We appreciate the assistance of the community leaders who are jointly working with us to make sure that the burden becomes much lesser.
Minister, in terms of social facilitation, that's going to be very important. Just speaking to the traditional leadership a few moments ago, you know, these are areas predominantly rural, and there's sentimental value for some of these families on the land in which they reside. Ancestral, some have buried their loved ones in their yards. So there might be a slight resistance to wanting to move. In fact, we've heard reports such as that where some communities have said, we don't want to move too far from where we've been staying for decades.
Yes, there is that. But there's also appreciation on the other hand that I am inside the river and everything else have been washed away. As you say, it needs all the sensitivity. It needs all the stakeholders. South African Council of Churches held us by the hand as government and families. We so appreciate them putting their best foot forward in assisting us even with psychological services. The psychological unit of the Department of Social Development, social workers, psychologists, and everybody is on site. Department of Health, from a health immunization point of view, they are on site. We're doing all we can to try and ease the burden, but we know beyond today, there comes a real mourning, real realities that people have to face jointly with us, but we are hopeful that we should be able to get our families well taken care of.
Right, Minister, thank you very much indeed. The Human Settlements Minister, Thembi Simelane, giving us an update on how far the process is, Ayanda, in terms of, you would know, I spoke about the Human Settlements Policy, which speaks about these communities being housed in these B&Bs, in these community halls, only for 30 days. So it's a race against time to ensure that land is found and permanent housing is, of course, erected for these families that have been affected by these devastating floods. So it's going to be a race against time in order to do that. A critical aspect, which I spoke about as well, Ayanda, speaking to the traditional leadership, this area predominantly rural, and traditional leadership are the ones that would be in charge of certain areas here. In fact, most of the areas, some people don't want to move from the areas that their ancestors, their grandfathers, grandmothers have occupied for a very long time. There's an element of sentimental value which is also attached to this. So the minister indicating that they've taken all of that into account. But after today's day of mourning and today's day of remembrance, that's certainly when the real work is going to start. It's a race against time to ensure that permanent accommodation is found for these affected families.
Absolutely. It's such an interesting leg to the story. We know communities around the country have always had such an interesting relationship with land, and I imagine many of those communities now have to kind of, I suppose, reimagine how that relationship might evolve in the wake of this tragedy. Chriselda Lewis live to us there from Mthatha at the King Sabatha Dalindyebo TVET College. For now, thanks very much indeed.